the spiritual warrior,
What?
wise warrior, make me an instrument of thy peace. We talk about, when we have inspiration without action, it's fantasy, as Michael Beckwith would say. And so this morning, I'm going to be concluding our July theme, and I'll be speaking. Our July theme has been speaking truth to circumstances, and I'll be speaking about the wise warrior today. The traditionally warriors have been long praised for standing up and fighting the forces that were threatening or opposing their loved ones and their communities. The winner of the battle gets to be king or queen of the hill and control what happens next. When they come home, they have, a victor's welcome, and they're everyone in the community says, "Oh, this is wonderful." Of course, if you lost, you may not make it home, and it's very different. All of these battles that take place in the outer physical world, and there can be so much destruction and bloodshed and hardship along the way, right? And so, the victors, the warriors, they might be victors, but all sides are going to lose ones to death or injury. Relationships are permanently torn apart. They're severed. Whether you win or lose, there's still a cost for that battle. And the homes, the farms, the bridges, and the roads, the whole environment may be destroyed on the battlefield. I mean, look at Ukraine right now. I mean, all of the homes and the livelihoods that have been destroyed, they're not even allowed to get the grain out to the people around the world. I think 25% of the world's grain or something like that comes from Ukraine. People depend on it. And, so, and even if their side won, many of the survivors discovered that their lives were so impacted by the battles that they can't recover even what existed before the conflict began, right? So this is the way of the world, according to David Robinson, the unpeaceful, unwise warrior. Like Don Quixote, they joust at every windmill that comes along, right? Now, Robinson also observes that in contrast, the wise warrior, the spiritual warrior, is already anchored in peace and poise. Rather than focusing on the world out there, the world of form that is always changing, they focus first on the spiritual truth, which is changeless and it's within. They focus on what needs to happen without needing to fight, right? They realize that everyone is a part of that same one life that includes all of life, each one of us. The person that we perceive as our neighbor is a part of me, right? It is a part of us. And so if that one life is, one hand is not going to fight the other, we need to learn to work together to create this world that works for everyone. And so the wise warrior begins by recentering into that oneness before they take action. Black Elk, in the book Walking the Red Road, provides this guidance. The commitment is within your heart and the path you walk. A true warrior has confidence to stand alone, the courage to make tough decisions, the compassion to listen and help. Thoreau, in his book called Walden, he reported on his experiment of living in nature near Walden's Pond. And so he chose to focus on his dreams rather than looking for difficulties, right? Because what you look for, you're going to find. Make sure you find some of that, right? So if you want more difficulties, look for them. And if you want to look, for your dreams, look for those. The glass is half full. And so he observed in that reading that we had this morning, if one advances confidently in the direction of their dreams and endeavors to live the life that they have imagined, they will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. They will put some things behind, meaning that they let go of some things from the past, and they will pass an invisible boundary. New laws will begin to be established, or old laws will be expanded, and they will live with the license of a higher order of beings. For Thoreau, this was the path to a higher existence that was in harmony with nature and built on a solid foundation, right? So how does the wise warrior develop that confidence that Walden, in that Thoreau was talking about in his book. Now, in New Thought, we understand that out there is a reflection of our consciousness in here, right? It could be our individual consciousness. The default consciousness is the collective consciousness of all the people who ever lived, whether they whatever they believed was true or false, but it's still there. It's been planted, and that's what the inner belief that is manifesting what happens in the outer world. So whatever we perceive needs to change in the outer world. We want to change something. Einstein reminds us that we can't solve a problem at the level of consciousness that created the problem. We have to go within. We have to shift something to something new. Tom Adson, in his book, Action Does It, he says, what you are living is what you really believe. We might talk about something else, but if we really believe something else underneath, that's what's going to control it. So whatever we are seeking, we cannot have anyway, because the law of mind keeps taking from us that which we are seeking. We only have that which we are. You know, if we keep saying that I want to have harmony in my life, I want to meet Mr. Right or Mrs. Right, someday it's going to be perfect. I just need to work for 5 more years and then I can retire, or I just need to get this new job and then it'll be good, or I just need to change this relationship, or do whatever I need to do. But that's always out there, and as long as you're out there, it's out there, so we have to learn and when you're dealing at the level of consciousness, there is no time or space. There's only the now, there's only the present. And so when we do prayer treatment, we always speak in the present. I am in this perfect job for me. I am in the perfect place. I am in that perfect relationship. Right. And so we see that time. It's like, I think of it in terms of like, if you have a pencil and it stretches out, and if you rotate that pencil, it becomes a point. Right. And so from that perspective, it all collapses into oneness. But if we stretch it out in the spectrum of time and space, we can see it separated, so we can understand the different parts. But if you see it all as one, it's all one. So we stretch it out to see what it is. All right. So Plotinus, he was a Greek philosopher who was born about the year 200 CE, and he's considered the founder of Neoplatonism. And Ernest Holmes, the founder of Science of Mind, he studied in depth Plotinus and all the other Greek philosophers and mystics throughout the ages. And so, as quoted in the Science of Mind textbook, Plotinus said, I do not argue, I contemplate. And as I contemplate, I let fall the forms of my thought. So for Ernest, this is how nature creates. It contemplates. It lets fall the seeds of its thought into the universal subjective, which, being the law, produces the object thought about. So when we have our thoughts, we choose what we're going to think, and we plant that seed into the universal subjective, and it will manifest whatever we're thinking or believing, really. And so this is the same process that is reproduced in humans. As the supreme being, the one nature has created this, the same thing happens in our own lives. Whatever we think falls into the universal subjective mind, and unless neutralized, keyword, tends to take objective form, right? So if we've had this long habit that's not getting us what we want, we can change that habit. So we need to, there it goes again. Stop, new thought, put it into place. All right. Mysticism is a very important part of what Ernest Holmes talked about. And the wise warrior is truly a mystic. Ernest Holmes spent a lot of time in the Science of Mind textbook talking about mysticism, and especially during the last 2 years of his life, clarifying the difference between psychics and mystics. Now, a psychic is someone who sees the tendency and motion in the physical world, how things will turn out if they just keep going the way that they're going, and the wheels keep rolling. But the psychic predictions, they seem contradictory because they just represent the flow as it's going along. And so different people have different perspectives. They see different psychic impressions of the form, which is always changing, right? And different psychics will have conflicting answers. Now, if we shift to the intellect, all right, well, people who analyze situations with logic and the scientific method. I was an engineer before I was a minister, so really great. I love to do that. And it's a step closer to finding an unbiased analysis of a situation. And it ties analysis to scientific laws that can be relied upon, actually to a point, because the Newtonian physics worked until relativity of Einstein, and even that they're finding there's a limit to that. There's something more, because it's all infinite, right? We have finite minds trying to understand the infinite, so we can never really fully understand the whole of it, right? Because we've only got a piece of the divine mind. But the infinite cosmos can only be known by mystics. When you have a cosmic consciousness experience, you get to the point where there is no time or place. There is no separation. There is only just being, that oneness, right? And the mystics are the ones that are always consciously courting the divine presence, right? They want to be in that consciousness of oneness and see from that place, right? So they have a glimpse of that infinite, of that divine harmony that is the natural state of nature, of all of life. And so the mystics are in tune with the infinite. Ernest Holmes says, mystics do not read human thought, but rather sense the atmosphere of God. The mystics of every age have sensed and taught the same truth. It's the unchangeable. So a mystic is like a wise warrior. They stay in conscious awareness of the divine presence, and they do not contend or argue with people. They see the truth and they know. Ernest calls mystics the great revealers to humans of the nature of the universe and the relationship of humans to God. The wise warrior pauses, steps back, and centers themselves in oneness and truth before entering the fray of a controversy or any situation, right? And this also sets in motion that higher possibility to manifest rather than letting things continue the way they always have. Set that new thought in motion. So the analogy is like when when you're playing ping pong and the two players can hit that ping pong ball back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And but if you want to change and do something different, you just stop hitting it back and you do something different. You change the game. You change your intention. So the change begins at that inner level before it manifests on the outer level. Now imagine how we could act together to change the world from the consciousness that we all come from the same source. If we know that we're one and we act from that oneness, rather than being in our individual silos, we're going to learn to have transformational relationships where we learn to understand and appreciate each other and our differences and understand where we're really coming from. And everyone really is looking for love. Every act is an act of love or a call for love. And that's a very transformative place to come from. And in order to do that, then we would be asking, what is the highest and best for me and for all of us? It's if we are all part of that one life that is God. And once we are each individually and collectively anchored in the power, presence, and wisdom of the infinite, the wise warrior can focus on what needs to be done without needing to fight. From that clarity and surrendering to a higher purpose, we change how we see the world. Instead of arguing, we contemplate wholeness and love. We become the change we want to see in the world, as Gandhi always told us. Instead of getting angry over a situation, pause and ask, what do I want to see here instead? Let go of the anger and what is Spirit's highest idea here? And then contemplate that instead of arguing, instead of hitting that ping pong ball back and forth with the anger ricocheting back and forth. One important difference when we're looking at the world is the difference between commitment and attachment. Now, we need to release our ego's ideas about what the perfect solution would be. We can get really stuck. The way things have always been, we would tend to create more of the same, good or bad, or just get stuck in the past. And sometimes we get so attached to one possibility that we don't want to give it up. All right. We have to release what is in order to make room for the new and higher possibility that is seeking to manifest. There's a great story that's told by Rachel Naomi Remen, who is a doctor, psychologist. And she has a book called Kitchen Table Wisdom. She was one of the first doctors to develop a psychological approach to supporting people with life-threatening illnesses. And this is a really great story that explains this difference. So in the early 1960s, she had a patient who was a young man who had become separated from a skiing party, and he spent 3 days alone in sub-zero temperatures, but somehow he managed to survive. And so he had been hospitalized for several days in the ski country up in the Northeast. And then he was flown to Dr. Remen's hospital in New York because he had frostbite and progressive gangrene of his feet. The local surgeons had wanted to amputate and had hoped that the New York vascular surgeons could save his feet and avoid this difficult choice. The young man really wanted to keep his feet. And so he had some initial surgeries. And then for 3 weeks, the outcome was not at all clear. Right? And then his left foot began to improve, but his right foot became steadily worse. The time for amputation was at hand, but the young man flatly refused. He preferred to keep his foot. Now, gradually, he became sicker and sicker as the toxins from his injured foot spread throughout his body. His family and friends were desperate, but he would not be moved. He would keep his foot. The situation came to a head late one evening when for the third or the fourth time, doctors on their rounds came and explained their most recent laboratory results and his worsening condition. Right? In the midst of this discussion, his fiancée, overwhelmed by the possibility of her beloved's death, was driven beyond her endurance. It was too much. And so weeping, she tore off her engagement ring off of her finger, and she put it on his little toe on his right foot. And she said it was all swollen and black by this time. And she said, I hate this damn foot, she sobbed. If you want this foot so much, why don't you marry it? You're going to have to choose. You can't have us both. And she stormed out of the room. Well, we all looked at that small, bright diamond, surrounded by all the black and rotting tissues of his foot. Even under the fluorescent lights, it sparkled with life, that diamond, and all it represented. The young man said nothing and closed his eyes with weariness. Weary ourselves, the doctors left to continue the medical rounds. The next day, the young man scheduled his surgery. So Dr. Remen continued to follow him through the fitting of his artificial foot and his rehab. And at the end of a year, he only had a slight limp that marked this difficult choice. And 2 weeks before his wedding, Dr. Remen revisited that final medical conference with him and asking him, what made the difference? What made you change your mind? And he said, seeing the diamond on his toe had shocked him. Jenny had been right. He had been married to his foot. Her dramatic gesture had helped him see for the first time that he was more attached to keeping his foot than he was committed to his life, to their life together that they had planned. And it had been the promise of that life together that had allowed him to survive those 3 days in the snow, in the cold. And here he was giving it up to keep a toe in a fruitless effort. So he chose life. He chose what was most important to him. And so he was getting married. You know, when attachment has a source in our personality, as the Buddhists refer to as the desire nature, commitment comes from the soul. All right. And when we're in relationship to life and human relationships, attachment closes down options, closes down our vision, and commitment opens them up. Right. Modern life has made us people of attachment rather than people of commitment. And indeed, many people have found it difficult to tell the difference between attachment and commitment. You know, how do you know when you have these difficult choices to make? And, you know, attachment leads us further and further into entrapment, into confusion, to smallness. Commitment, though it sometimes might feel constricting, ultimately it will lead us to greater degrees of freedom. Right? Both involve a moment, an experience of holding sometimes against the flow of events or against temptation. But one can notice the difference between the two by noticing over time whether one has moved through this activity or this relationship moves us closer to freedom and closer to, or to, you know, bondage if it's the attachment. You know, attachment is a reflex. It's an automatic response when we're may not reflect our deepest good. We're trying to find something secure to hold on to. But that outer form is not our security. Commitment is a conscious choice to align ourselves with our genuine purpose, our values, and who we truly are as a part of the one. Survival is at a setting of life-threatening illness, involves a willingness to let go of everything except for life. You know, I know for me, when I went through that breast cancer experience, it was about surrendering everything. And it was a gradual process over the months. But when I finally let go of everything, that's when the full healing happened. And this was, let's see, how many years ago now? Eight, more than eight and a half. So it's a, you know, it's something, but when you find that when you surrender, that ultimate surrender, you know that life is truly all there is. It's a great sense of freedom, of knowing what's important. And so we know what to release and what to embrace. It can be challenging sometimes, but the wise warrior, we first seek to recenter ourselves in spirit, discern what is our purpose in the situation, and let go of attachment to the form that manifests. Edwina Gaines, in her great book, The Four Spiritual Laws of Success, she quotes Max Dupree. The greatest thing at any moment to be willing to give up who we are in order to become all we can be. Right? Give up who we are in order to become who we can be. Now, in Science of Mind, one version of this is that we say we treat or select what we're asking for. We treat for what we want, but not how. You know, the infinite has 360 degrees to create what it is that we want. And we might only know one little way that might not be the best or might not even be possible, but Spirit has infinite ways of doing it. And so we learn to let go and let God. We speak our word, we speak our discern the truth of that, what it is, and allow Spirit to manifest that. God knows the highest and best answer to all our questions, to all of our problems. It's like, you know, it's like when you have a coin and you look at one side of the coin is the problem and it looks really challenging. But remember that on the other side of that coin is the answer. And it's always there. For every question, for every problem, there is always that answer in Spirit. One doesn't exist without the other, right? So God knows, because God knows, you know. And don't say, God may know the answer, but I don't. Okay, that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. That would be a house divided against itself, right? So say, The mind of God in me knows the answer, right? The mind of God in me knows the answer. So do a spiritual mind treatment, a prayer for clarity. There's a great article in the July Science of Mind magazine by Ernest Holmes, and he says that when you remember and assert that the mind of God in me knows the answer, you will find that new thoughts and new ideas just begin to flow through your thinking, giving you the solution to your problem. You'll wake up at 3:30 in the morning and with great ideas, and have your pad and pencil ready, because you'll be amazed at what comes through when we let go. And remember that it's not just enough to say that God is all there is. You must make the next step to say that there is one life. That life is God's life, and that life is my life right now. I am a part of the one. The mind of God is my mind. My mind is a part of that divine mind. And then think and act and live as if the answer is coming to your conscious mind for action. All right. Open the channel. Right. As long as we're in fear, the channel's closed. But when we open the door and trust, it will come through. You know, when you step on the accelerator in your car, you assume you've put gas in it or you've charged it up overnight. We trust that the car is going to accelerate and go forward, right? Or in reverse, if you've got the gear in reverse. So similarly, trust that the law of God will shift into action just as reliably. When you speak your word, we choose with love where we want to go, then the law will take us there and make it so. You know, as the solutions are revealed to you, as you are true to you are as an expression of God in the world, you will feel the tension and anxiety within you diffuse, right? You will know that you are in partnership with God. You will feel that freedom. You will be amazed at everything comes together at the right time and in the right place to support you in perfect ways. You know, Raymond Charles Barker always has such direct, no nonsense approach to metaphysics. He has a great book called Treat Yourself to Life. And one of the quotes from there, you are in the midst of a power which is saying to you, use me, direct me, express me. I am ready. Are you? Are you? You know, in the Bible, Jesus didn't let himself get distracted by how things were now or by time and space when he performed miracles. You know, someone came up to him and he declared his highest vision of good, that it's now so, and not next year, but right now. So when a sick person came to him, he didn't say, oh, Lord, heal this woman. Please, please. You know, we don't need to plead to God because God's not out there. We don't need to beg. In fact, we're speaking the words of spirit. When we're centered, we're a part of God. And he said to the woman, you are well. And she was right then and there. Right. That's the way it works. And so when our consciousness gets to that point, then it immediately falls out. Right. Now, I remember one time I was looking for a new house, and I went in until I went to see the minister, and this was in Reno, and Reverend Doreen was an amazing, and a lot of times when you go into a session with a practitioner or a therapist or something, you expect to have an hour session, and you get to talk about all your stuff, and they give you a little education, and then they do a prayer, and it's just and that's great. For her, if you got to speak more than if it was longer than 5 minutes, that was really unusual. And so I started telling her about the house and all that. She said, all right, what do you want? And I told her, well, we want this house. And she said, okay, thank you, God, for Pam's perfect house. Okay, see you later. Okay, so that became my new prayer. And guess what? That week we got the house. So it works. It works. And so know also that the will of God is always good. Now, Plotinus, when his writings, he gives God the nickname of good. All right. For God must be life-giving if it is to sustain itself. And as our good manifests, we are not becoming something we are not. We are unbecoming something that we are not and becoming who we are. Actually, we already are. So we're not becoming, we're just revealing. So don't get lost in anger and stewing in your problems unless you want them to continue, right? So turn your focus and your heart towards the solutions. Accept the demonstrations and live in gratitude and joy. All is well, right? So we're all called to be wise warriors. We can no longer hide in our little silos and our caves of safety. The world is just too interconnected. We are all part of the one. Be open to that divine life that is seeking to unfold itself through you and as you. We must be the power of love and harmony and unity. That is who we truly are. Get yourself and your consciousness centered in the one life, right? Know that all the answers to your questions and your problems are revealed through divine love and wisdom. Just open the door, right? Be willing to release what no longer serves you and embrace the divine guidance and higher possibilities that are being provided to you. Be willing to be agents of spirit, wise warriors, spiritual warriors, and practitioners of truth. For it is the infinite invisible that must act in, through, and as the finite beings we are here on earth. Be willing to listen and say yes. All right. So our beloved CSL Tahoe-Truckee has come to a turning point in our evolution. You know, next week, we're going to have a congregational meeting instead of our regular Sunday service. Our second floor tenants given notice they're not going to renew their lease as of the end of the year. And so we're taking this opportunity to revisit our purpose as a spiritual center and how this building supports us or distracts us from that purpose. And Penny Scholler, our president, is going to talk a little bit more about that during the announcements. But, you know, come and join us. And your voice is a part of how we're listening to spirit and what it can come through for all of us. So join us next Sunday as we gather as the spiritual wise warriors. Let's take this to prayer. So in this moment, we know that there is only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life and the life of each person here, each person in our congregation, each person in the sound of my voice, each person throughout the world. And as I let go of the things that I have held on to as security and realize that my security truly lies in this greater sense of who I am, of being a part of the one, I feel that flow of life flowing through me and as me, and I feel greater possibilities opening up. And I see that truth sifting itself up to the surface, the spiritual truth. I see that divine presence everywhere. And as we are looking for answers, that truth rises to the surface and it becomes clear. Before it is divine guidance and clarity and wisdom that is guiding us as individuals and as centers. Whatever we are seeking is seeking us. And so I declare in this moment that we reach each other, that everything is cleared away for this connection to happen, for the understanding of what it is, for the future of this building, for the future of this center. It is for the highest and best for all of us. And so we step out with courage. We step out with a willingness to rise to the occasion and first get centered in spirit and listen, to see our path and to take action to move in that direction for it to unfold perfectly with joy and with wisdom, with ease and with divine, limitless energy. It is great to come together as CSL Tahoe-Truckee and to our greater yet to be. And I am so grateful for the infinite blessings that are showered upon each one of us in this moment and every moment in this beautiful day as it unfolds this week, the future, all of it is so beautiful and wonderful, full of generosity and abundance and peacefulness and wholeness, deep, abiding wholeness and peace. This is the truth of who we are, the spiritual warriors, the wise warriors. And so we say, thank you, Spirit. Thank you for showing me who I am. Thank you that I am now revealing who I am as this spiritual warrior. I thank you for all of the spiritual warriors that are here gathered. And we rise up together and we lift up all of humanity to a greater place of being together in harmony and peace and love. For this is the reality of who we are. This is the divine intention for life. And so each of us listens, sees our part, and willingly says yes. It is all God and it is all good. Thank you, Father, Mother, God. Thank you, infinite and visible. And as I release these words, I know that it is already done. And together we say, and so it is.